Hello, today is April 1st, 2023, and we'll talk about two architects, Kiyonory Kikutake and Mario Botta, both related to the day of 1st of April. And we'll start with this very important Japanese architect, who was also an important metabolist architect, and a very influential presence in the large group of very important Japanese architects. Why is it that Japan has such a formidable, activity in architecture? And of course, not only in architecture. I think we could ask this question: what makes Japan so immensely, competitive, so to speak? Why is it that this country has the largest number of Pritzker prizes? I mean, there are larger countries than Japan, both in terms of land and population, that do not have the same results in architecture. So what is it about Japan? Unfortunately, I cannot move forward because okay. So Kiyonory Kikutake, April 1st, 1928. So he was born 95 years ago and died in December 2011, was a prominent Japanese architect, known as one of the founders of the Japanese Metabolist group. He was also the tutor and employer of several important Japanese architects, such as Toyo Ito, Shozo Uchi, and Itsuko Hasegawa. I had the pleasure to participate in a conference by both Toyo Ito and Itsuko Hasegawa. One day I will talk about Itsuko Hasegawa too, because he deserves it. Kiyonory Kikutake was one of the most gifted and influential of the metabolist generation that dominated post-war Japan. His architecture remains as powerful as ever. Somebody wrote this. Here was the man, and he was both an architect, an urbanist, a visionary, an ecologist, and you name it. Learning from Kiyonory Kikutake, agricultural landscape, primitiveness, symbolism. I mean, we can talk a lot about all of them: agricultural landscape, primitiveness. This could relate, for example, to the words and thoughts of Su Fujimoto, primitive futures. And symbolism could be traced back to the thoughts of Kenzo Tange, who thought that symbolism is very, very important in architecture and is something that we so often neglect, unfortunately. Anyway, Metabolist, Kiyonory Kikutake's Marine City, 1968. It was a heroic effort on the part of Japan to transcend the tragic effects of the Second World War. And this country was able in less than 20 years to become one of the most powerful economies in the world, and culturally also, immensely important. And in architecture, they still have a vigor that most countries do not have. But at that time, it was this heroic dimension of their effort which impresses me the most. It was truly a revenge that post-war Japan tried to achieve on the very, very sad, and maybe the word sad is not strong enough, of what happened in the Second World War. If we are to mention just the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So technology, yes, but it's not just technology, because here we are dealing with Japan, and Japan has a very deep, deeply rooted culture in myth, in their systems of faith, and a great, great connection with nature. And this meeting between this intermingling between deep affection for nature and an incredible devotion to technology, as sophisticated as possible, created the background on which Japan achieved what it achieved, and it continues to achieve. The SkyHouse from 1958, his own house, actually. So 1958. Oh, this was 65 years ago. What can we say? It's a house maybe that doesn't impress us incredibly, but when you consider it was built in 1958, and its very name, a sky house, I wonder what Frank Lloyd Wright would have thought about it, because he thought that the house should emerge from the earth and be attached to the earth. And in this case, it's a sky house. Kiyonory Kikutake. But even if it's a sky house in a different sense from, let's say, the anti-gravitational architecture that some architects today advocate. This is not actually anti-gravitational or non-gravitational. In fact, if you look at the section and the side elevation, it is elevated from the Earth, but it's not ignoring gravity. It's coherent, it's clear, it's logical, it's rational, it's not arrogant. It's not an arrogant house that says, I'm going to ignore gravity. No, but for some reason he thought of elevating it above the earth the way he does. You can see his own house because there is a large picture of his Utopian, if we are to call them so, Utopian studies. The SkyHouse, Kiyonory Kikutake. Even Rem Koolhaas visited him in this house, and we are going to see some pictures later on with Koolhaas talking to Kikutake inside this house, the Sky House. From the time of its being built and what this picture depicts, you can see large buildings, continue to be built. So now the house is surrounded by massive constructions. A large, unique space. And various possible furniture arrangements within that space. Interesting how he placed the bathroom and the kitchen counter at the periphery as distinct minimal units. Maybe these were initial studies because it confuses me a little bit. I see on the plan in the upper left corner the position of the bathroom and the kitchen counter different from let's say the one in the middle on the bottom line. I'm sure he didn't imagine that he would just build them differently depending on his whim. You see the kitchen counter, because it's only a counter plus the refrigerator, is just part of the larger room, which is divided by these panels. The SkyHouse. Now I don't know who this gentleman is. It's not Shinohara. Sorry, not Shinohara, Kikutake. I'm thinking of Shinohara because tomorrow I will talk about him. And architects, when they have the instinct for do certain things, and then they find logistical or logical arguments for doing that thing, is often I feel these arguments, these justifications, I think they are a posteriori. They happen because you need to find a reason for something that was born without necessarily calculated logical cause, I think. Kohlhaas interviewing Kikutake within his home SkyHouse. Here they are. Here they are with the students eager to know, eager to talk with an important architect. And I wish there are more students like the ones in the picture here. Without great curiosity, you cannot do great architecture. I don't think so. Now, I don't know. I mean, maybe this is how it looked initially. And then because you see around it very low buildings, I imagine that car was his car. Anyway, you know how it looks now, surrounded by tall apartment buildings. Now a temple ossuary, 1965. A very interesting building, actually, with this concrete covering, uh, maybe oppressive somehow, but considering the function of the building, I think it's a very powerful statement. You have this floating cap, this floating covering of concrete that doesn't reach the earth. I wonder what Kikutake thought of when he did this. It is clearly a meditation on the finality of life, on death. This reminds me also a little bit of that memorial by Giuseppe Perugini built in Italy, which also has this heavy slab above where the, the memorializing graves or gravestones were placed. Interesting comparison between Perugini and Kikutake. A hotel now, a mundane function after the ossuary, but here we see the influence of, I mean, most people who would look at this image would say this is in Japan. And maybe not just because of the landscape, because of the gardening, but also the building, the silhouette of the building. These architects, they are very forward-looking, very modern, but also rooted in what we call tradition. And the building is able to evoke somehow the meeting between the two, at least from the previous, or in the previous picture, this one as well. Now, they used a lot of concrete, these Japanese architects. I read that at one point, Japan was the country that was using the most concrete in the world. Now it's probably China, but at that time, there wasn't a grave concern with, pollution as it is now. Now, I would be more reticent to use so much concrete, but at that time, they tried to escape the ashes of the Second World War, and concrete helped. It also helped to evoke the heroic stance of the Japanese people. So this is a hotel by Kiyonory Kikutake. And again, the gardening of the Japanese is so, delicate and subtle and complex and lyrical. It shows the affection that Japan has for nature, a deeply felt affection. Even when they build with a lot of concrete, they never leave the space around the building, a no man's land. They take care of it. Even in the case of Osaka 70, or the Expo of 1970 in Osaka, which was demolished after the Expo, but they created a beautiful park where no square inch was left without the most delicate attention. We see Mount Fuji, and we see the hotel by Kikutake, and we see a tree. Nothing between them except the sky. Pacific Hotel, another hotel. Interesting how something that is not advised where I am, but the Japanese have no problem to do so, to place the bathrooms as, exterior distinct elements which animate actually the facade, the sides of the building. I mean, the architectural expression of the building would be different if the bathrooms were not externalized in this way. Practically, the cells of the bathrooms create dynamic facade, and this is important, very important. And you see the bathrooms are treated differently. They are not all identical. There are like three kinds of bathrooms here, two together, one, then here with a different shape. This was the future. I don't know if he said it. I included it in the presentation which I prepared a few years ago, or I found these words in an article about him. But it is an intriguing, short statement. This was the future. We can talk about it, maybe on a special occasion with this very title. This was the future. A civic center, 1966, a very spectacular building, very unexpected for a civic center. Look at this. You know, it's a mechanism or a mechanical organism, structurally intriguing and provocative. You know, if you look at it, you would not say it's a civic center. You would say maybe it's either an industrial building or a gymnasium of some sort. Kiyonory Kikutake. This city hall is still very provocative, aesthetically speaking. You are tempted to think that it's like an accordion, you know, an harmonica, that you can squeeze those parts that are diagonal, but it is not so. It's clear that the metabolic processes of nature are here reinterpreted architecturally, and it's about the bio in architecture. It's a bioarchitecture, abstracted as it should be. Expo Tower, Osaka, 1972. A remarkable tower that he built. But here it says 1972. It should be 1970. He worked together with Kenzo Tange, Narata Isozaki, and other architects, and they created a very spectacular Osaka World Exhibition. Here again, we see technology and geometry and the forces of nature contributing to a certain vision that is associated with what we call metabolism. Osaka will have again a world exhibition in 2025. Apparently, they are very good at this sort of thing. They even had one, I forgot exactly in what year, around 1990s, dedicated to gardens. Apparently, a very successful world exhibition as well. This tower is by Kiyonory Kikutake. Now, I took the liberty to show a tower done by this person, Chang Yo Li, a project which is not related to Kikutake, but in a certain way, maybe it is. It shows, you know, innovative minds thinking today about how to create, like in this case, a syntec ecology. It's a tower that this, I think, a student in architecture created. The Royal College of Art, this graduate student, Chang Georg Lee, has developed a concept to transform the BT Tower in London into a pollution harvesting high rise. And here is the, you know, the transformation he thought of. I wonder what Pugin would have said about, you know, having his famous PT Tower transformed into something like this. But the legitimation of this attempt is rooted in the problems we have today. So entitled in this difficult to read composite word, the project predicts the eventual redundancy of the 189-meter tower currently used for telecommunications and suggests repurposing it as an eco skyscraper that collects airborne dirt particles and helps to reduce the level of respiratory illness in London. I mean, here we arrived, you know, and I find these images very, very provocative. The process would involve extracting the carbon from petrol fumes and using it to produce sustainable biofuel. The project is about a new infrastructure gathering resources from pollutants in the city atmosphere, which could be another valuable commodity in the age of depleting resources, says Chang Yo Li. So, you know, visionary projects are still being made, and it's good that it is so. It looks different in many ways from the tower by Kikutake, but somehow I think it expresses our time. Referencing a quote from architect Buckminster Fuller, Lee says, pollution is nothing but the resources we are not harvesting. We allow them to disperse because we've been ignorant of their value. He adds, pollution could be another economy. Well, wishful thinking. Anyway, he worked hard for this. It's a diploma project from the architecture program at the Royal College of Art in London. And he was one of the two winners of the Shepard Robson Student Prize for Architecture at the Royal Academy of Art Summer Exhibition. And here are some other you know, images of his project. He also doesn't say no to chaos and to you know, entanglements, architectural entanglements. As such, I think he is very up to date. I mean, rationalism is not sustainable any longer. Reason is necessary, but not rationalism in the narrow sense of the word. Between 1968 and 1983, Kikutake produced numerous projects for floating cities with evocative names such as Marine City and Ocean City. In 1975, he finally got to build a real one. Aguapolis was a 10,000 square meter floating city, a crossover between an aircraft carrier and an oil rig. It formed the centerpiece of the Okinawa Ocean Expo. Aguapolis, built by Kikutake in 1975. Here it is. I'm not sure this is what our oceans and seas need, but um, at that time there was more optimism in relating to, you know, the activity of human beings on this earth than today. Although today there are many projects and some of them built in the same spirit, and we are going to see one a little bit later after this one, built by Diller and Scofidio, inspired, I'm sure, by this project, and also by the a pavilion that Pepsi Cola built in Osaka. Unfortunately, I'm not so sure the idea of building a blur building in Switzerland by Diller and Scofidio was very original. But it looks striking. So this is what Diller and Scofidio did. You saw what Kikutake did, no? Here. And then we see Diller and Scofidio here, you know, in Switzerland on a lake. And but here is a lot to say about this. I just want quickly to show some images of this blur building, which becomes covered with a fog produced by the building. So it's a building which, when it functions properly and completely, so to speak, it disappears behind the fog like this. So it's a building without elevations, practically, when the fog is activated. Diller and Scofidio. It's a complex story behind it. You can find on the web all the details about it if you are interested. But Kikutake is still part of the discussion when we mention this building as well. Izumo Shrine. I like this building very much by Kiyonory Kikutake. I think he's very good when he's rooted in the systems of faith of his country, and when he is also resolutely futuristic, and he combines the spirituality of you know, being rooted, as I said, in Japan's mythology and systems of faith, and, you know, the present, architectural present. And here we see such a structure. Is a shrine, Izumo Shrine, built by Kiyonory Kikutake, which it's a dignified architecture, robust yet sensitive, asserting yet modest. This is what sustains these Japanese architects, even when they are very forward-looking and extremely dedicated to the highest technology. They have the support. They are grounded in that cultural and spiritual past, which they never ignored. And this gives them legitimacy and force. They are grounded. I mean, the building seems to be very different from the one on the right, but maybe in essence it's not so different. The materials are different, the aesthetical, you know, aspect of the building, but the spirit is not very different from the building on the right. It's part of a complex that serves the same faith. Terrace houses, they build such a thing too. unfortunately, I don't have a lot of pictures. The name of a housing complex in Mishima and designed by Kiyonory Kikutake. Here is another picture. There was a lot of confidence then in Japan. 1975, when the economy was booming, and it was a very vigorous looking forward. So they built anything. They were able to build anything. Urban studies. I only have this image, but we are going to see a few other things a little bit later. You know, studies for urban developments, going high, reaching for the sky, reaching for utopia. Sofitel Tokyo, a hotel from 1994, which, if I understood correctly, was demolished. Very, very sad, because it is an impressive tower, and I cannot accept that it was demolished, but it was. I don't know for what reason. I hope not to create a parking lot. Kiyonory Kikutake. I bet these trees, blooming in the spring, agree more with the tower by Kiyonory Kikutake than with some of the buildings, lower buildings around, which were probably left in peace, but the tower by Kiyonory Kikutake was destroyed. This is another tower, but I don't know its function. This seems to be more like a sculptural tower, not an inhabitable tower. But still very, very expressive. Another hotel. And the Edo Tokyo Museum, 1992, so more recent, a large building. We should not forget that Japan has, very famous earthquakes. But it seems the Japanese are not scared of earthquakes. They are not impressed that they can build the, cantilever part just like the one we look at here. In a way, a larger replica of the SkyHouse. Here it is. Hard to miss it. Edo Tokyo Museum, Kikutake. Marine City, Hawaii, 1971. Another, attempt to extend humankind on water, utopian projects, if we are to call them so, but utopia could be realized with some, corrections maybe. And Ecopolis, an early 1990s study, and I think this is the last image of this presentation on Kiyonory Kikutake. Ecopolis. Well, some people could play with the words and with the word and say egopolis. But I think he was sincere. I think it is an ecopolis with a C, not with a G. And now we go to the second architect that we pay homage to Mario Botta, who is 80 years old today. And this presentation is far from being complete, but I had to do it very quickly because I lost the previous one that I made. Mario Botta, happy birthday to you. This was the man when he was young. He studied in Venice at the University of Architecture in Venice. He had the chance to work together with and study with Carlos Carpa. Well, he also worked with Louis Kahn, who had a great influence on him. And he built a lot. Here he is in later. And he is also the founder of the School of Architecture in Mendrisio. He was born in Mendrisio. I found these words about him. I don't know if they belong to him or they belong to a critic or someone who wrote about him, between matter and memory. And I found it rather appropriate for his work, between matter and memory. Mario Botta, born on April 1st, 1943, is a Swiss architect. We know this, and we read a little bit about him. Botta designed his first building, a two-family house at Morvio Superiore in Ticino at age 16. He graduated from the Università IUAV di Venezia, the only architecture university in Italy, while the arrangements of spaces in this structure is inconsistent. Its relationship to its site, separation of living from service spaces, and deep window recesses echo what would become his stark, strong, towering style. His designs tend to include a strong sense of geometry, often being based on very simple shapes, yet creating unique volumes of space. This is from Wikipedia. His buildings are often made of brick, yet his use of material is wide, varied, and often unique. Fra materia e memoria. This is the same line that I read in English, but this is in Italian. Some drawings. I didn't, in the hurry to prepare this material, I didn't include his early drawings. I think he was drawing better when he was young than when he became older, maybe because he became tired of his own success. The drawings that he did later, like this one, are rather, very quick sketches, and I personally don't find them very, very attractive graphically, but because that's how I start a presentation, by showing also the drawings of the architect I am talking about. I included these drawings. But these are drawings, as I said, done later in his life. When he was young, he was influenced a lot by Louis Kahn. Here he is drawing on some paper on the wall. He loves to draw and draws manually, although in Mendrisio, the school founded by him, they study digital technologies very early on, from the first year. and it's not optional. You have to do it. Here he is drawing a chair that he actually built. Unfortunately, in this presentation, I do not show his furniture designs and other sketches. We are going to see this building later on. Now, the first construction of Mario Botta, about which I read just a few minutes ago, from 1961 to 1963, the parish house in Genestrerio. This is the house that he built when he was 16 years old, but he also built, and I imagine later, the facade for this church. And I like the facade very much. In fact, I like it more than some of his very celebrated later buildings. I don't know at what age he did this facade, but this house is the one he built, and he mentioned at building it at 16. Somehow I like his early buildings more than his later buildings, because his early buildings are yet unaffected by the mannerisms that he himself generated. And this is the facade of this church. I forgot how it is called. I thought I mentioned the name, but anyway, it's very simple, but it has an artistic doorway, which was not done by him, but by a sculptor. But I think the facade of the building is impressive in its simplicity. In my opinion, he is better than Peter Zumthor in this particular instance. Bianchi House. Mario Botta is a famous early house that he built. Yes, he works with the simple geometries, but the crystallization of the spaces do leave space for do create unexpected results. The landscape is magnificent. The architecture is very clearly defined, but because of the large openings in the walls, it connects with the outside. It's not. It could have been very alien in the landscape, but because of those large erosions, if I am to call them so, the prism is receiving and giving, is participating into what we call the environment. And also the unusual aspect that you enter the house at the top, not at the bottom. This also creates, something distinct. Some echoes on the right, a little bit from Carlos Scarpa, his professor or his tutor at the University of Architecture in Venice. At that time, he had a fresh vision, and his buildings were, expressing this vision appropriately. But later on, I think sometimes he became a little bit, the prisoner of his own maniera. San Pietro House, 1979. Very often he has a, a solid which he cuts in half. So you can see the two parts that were disassociated, like here. It's a rift between two parts, but there is also the whole, which is the cube, almost the cube. This became a signature, a trademark for Mario Botta, a little bit tiring at times. He was very influenced by Louis Kahn, but I think Louis Kahn is a superior architect, although Mario Botta has some remarkable achievements, and we are going to see some of them. I would think what differentiates Louis Kahn from Mario Botta is that, well, on one hand, one was the teacher and the other one the student, so to speak, but more than this, I think Mario Botta, as despite the fact that he is very interested in what is called the sacred, he does have a rather high level of the mundane in his work. And this could be problematic sometimes, but he did build some very convincing structures for religion, for spirit, for the sacred. And maybe he even thought of doing his villas, somehow, not necessarily inspired by Villa Rotonda of Palladio, although he has one himself that is called Rotonda, and we are going to see it. But the idealism of that kind of architecture seems to animate him, or animated him. And not too many architects at that time, and even today, or especially today, have a similar idealism. He believed in solid architectural statements, but he tried to bring instability into the buildings through these sometimes unexpected cuts into the prism, into prismatic silhouettes of the building. Unfortunately, when I made this PowerPoint presentation today, I couldn't find satisfactory resolution for a number of pictures, and I apologize. Like this one is small, or this one. I don't know. Either was something wrong with my old laptop, or I don't know, or with with a PowerPoint technology, but I just couldn't. Although they had large dimensions on Google Images, but here that's all I got. So I apologize. You'll see the same problem a little bit later. Anyway, as compared to the other buildings that surround this building by Mario Botta, his building does have an architect. The others, we are not sure. But in this case, we say, yes, it's the will of the architect. Maybe sometimes the will of the architect is too obvious, a little bit, maybe. I don't know. But we see on the elevation on the left, the upper left, and even here, maybe because they became so well known, these buildings by him, that, they don't surprise any longer. They are a little bit facile. They became, icons, and they don't generate, in my opinion, great surprise any longer. This is how the building looks from the back. Sorry again for the small resolution picture. And now Casa Rotonda. I mentioned in 1982. 1982 was the year when the postmodern Venice Biennial took place under the directorship of Paolo Portoghesi, but still the architecture of Mario Botta at that time was intriguing, was powerful, was iconic. I mean, he believed, and he still believes in bricks, in stones, in organic materials. Maybe Patrick Schumacher was right that postmodernism and deconstructivism were two transitional styles, so to speak. First with a number of modernism, then in the later part of the 20th century, postmodernism and deconstruction, and then after these transitional substyles or styles, I forgot how Patrick Schumacher calls them, follows parametricism with its own substyles. The last one a few years ago being tectonism. But Mario Botta never left the solidity of what he believed in for the seductions, sometimes violently so, or sometimes, mimicked in a seductive way of deconstruction. And nor was his postmodernism, highly nostalgic, in the sense that he didn't borrow stylistic elements from history. So I wouldn't say that his buildings are historicist. They are not. But there is a connection with postmodernism, and that's why there are articles about him, where some of his buildings are placed within the context of what we call postmodernism. It's not that postmodernism of nostalgia that animated many disenchanted souls at the end of the 20th century. No, he still believed in an abstraction, in a strong geometry, and he didn't employ borrowed columns from I don't know what era and so on. In my opinion, it's a little bit regrettable that the staircase externalizes itself in this way, rather convenient and a little bit predictably. It could have done more, but I think, considering the purity of the cylinder. The church San Giovanni Battista Monio in Switzerland, 1996. We saw some drawings of it. Now we see the building. There is heavy masonry here. Some people would say that it's too heavy for our time, but who knows? Who knows? Maybe not. But we remember those words between matter and memory. We see both matter and memory. We also see ornament. He's not afraid to bring sensitivity to his masonry walls through graphic means which are ornamental in nature. He obviously believes in architecture in a way in which maybe not too many of us still do. We are going to see a number of churches um, built by him because he did build a lot in the field of what he calls the sacred. I would be hesitant a little bit to use this word sacred because, like the word love, if it's too employed, it becomes weaker actually. But to replace it with what? It's a question. Again, sorry for the resolution of these pictures. I just couldn't find them bigger or I couldn't make them bigger unless I blew them up, but losing the sharpness of the lines. So this is the section through the building. It's a small chapel, it's a small building, but still monumental. And the interesting plan, employing the ellipse towards the outside and then inside the rectangle. We are going to see a little bit later a church, well, an homage to Borromini, who also employed the ellipse in San Carlo alle Quattro Fontane. And here it is, San Carlino Church, built in 1999. And I think he had a very seductive idea to reproduce in wood half of the church built in Rome by Borromini, that is San Carlo alle Quattro Fontane, and this is why it's called San Carlino Church. He simply cut it in half, and I think he created something memorable. It was done again as an homage to Borromini. I don't know exactly on what occasion. It was probably an important commemorative year, 1999. Maybe this is Lake Lugano in Switzerland. And this is the homage of Mario Botta to the great Baroque architect Borromini, Francesco Borromini, who ended his life by committing suicide, I think at 67 or 68. Disenchanted by life and perhaps his rivalry with Bernini. It looks very, provocative, especially from the side, because you see clearly it's cut in half. And yes, again, between matter and memory. Mario Botta. He simply reproduced, the details, the architectural configuration of what Borromini did in Rome, but in wood. I think it is a very good work. But the drawings are probably expressing very intimately the time we are in. The idealism or ideality of Borromini, not to mention Bernini, and that time, uh, you know, is are probably difficult to sustain these days. That's why very important architects today draw almost disenchanted drawings, like these sketches by Mario Botta. I wonder what he felt, what he thought when he made these nervous sketches. This is not how Borromini drew. This is the 20th century or the 21st century, the 20th century. But this was the idea, to cut in half, you know, the interior of the building by Borromini in Rome. And with the help of digital technology, this became feasible, and it was done. And I salute it as a good work. I mean, how else to express your homage towards Borromini? You couldn't compete with him, but in an original way, Mario Botta succeeded in showing both affection and distance somehow. And in a way, it's a meditation on life itself, because we are all born to die, and we are all accompanied by a shadow, which at the end becomes vertical while we become horizontal. I don't know if I expressed properly what I wanted to say. Chapel of Mount Tamaro in Switzerland, Santa Maria degli Angeli, this is how it is called, this chapel, and is one of his best works, in my opinion. It's built with stones in a magnificent landscape, and it's a powerful work. And we see again the duality of his architecture, the two-ness, if I am to use this word, left, right, and then the rift in between them. Stone, stone, and stone again. Maybe these steps are a little bit mechanical. He employs such elements sometimes, but the way he configured this building, I think, is a success. Very much held by the magnificent landscape, of course. It's literally a building between the earth and the sky. I'm unhappy with these images, but as I said, I had no choice. The interiors is rather surprising and very courageous, I would say, with its level of abstraction and the presence of blackness and wood. It's an interior which doesn't leave you indifferent. nor being on this terrace, I think, leaves you indifferent. It's impossible contemplating those mountains and the sky. Is it a Zarathustrian statement? I don't know. I mean, it is very ample. That stone brought there, it's um, it's not really an ecological building. It's not a building which asserts eco values. It's it's assertive still of man, but a man who cannot live without something higher than him. This is the this is the plan. But sorry, again, it's a small picture. An equally small section, longitudinal, and here is the building from the side. This is, I think, a very moving picture. It's really like walking towards the infinite. This image makes me think a little bit of Massimo Scolari, whom I presented the other day. But Scolari didn't build the visions he expressed through his drawings, but Mario Botta built. La Chiesa del Santo Volto, I left this in Italian. Somehow I like the Italian in this case more. It's in Torino, in Italy, and I think it's a good building. Another church by this architect who is not at all indifferent to what we call the sacred. Sometimes he's capable of creating these surprising interiors through unexpected manipulations of the geometrical forms. Torino, which has great church architecture, as we know from some of the architects we talked about here on Zoom. Now, a synagogue and the Jewish Heritage Center, Symbolista Synagogue in Tel Aviv. The Symbolista Synagogue and Jewish Heritage Center is a cultural center and the main synagogue of Tel Aviv University. It was designed in 1996 by Mario Botta and constructed from 1997 to 1998. Has a few echoes of not towards the outside, but if we see the section of the unbuilt synagogue by Louis Kahn in Jerusalem, and there are other echoes from Louis Kahn here. Again, I'm exasperated by these drawings, and I couldn't solve this problem. Particularly, this section makes me think of the synagogue project done by Louis Kahn for Jerusalem, which was not built, unfortunately. I think one day someone has to build that building, just as someone built, or some people built Saint-Pierre de Firminy Vert by Le Corbusier after he died. Now, what is that silhouette? I don't know if he did this drawing or in his office, but I wonder why he used the paradigmatic Le Corbusier's little man, but muscular, little but muscular in these sections. I'm not sure it was needed. Anyway, maybe they are not his drawings or his office. Every cathedral in France, a large building, yes, it's a cathedral with an unusual, crown of trees at the top. Here again, we see some echoes of a staircase done by Louis Kahn for the Yale Art Gallery, but at a much larger scale. Hard to see this. Sorry, I'm referring to this, but it looks like it's not a circle. It's an ellipse, but maybe it is a circle. I couldn't understand from this drawing. But echoes from Louis Kahn are all very obvious. But less obvious are, what we see outside. And yes, this, I don't know, at first I didn't like it, this crown of trees, but I don't know. I still have to think about it. It's an architecture that I think in many of his works, even those dedicated to what we call the sacred, Mario Botta couldn't quite get rid of some touches of the mundane somehow. I have the feeling. Or maybe I should say it's about the graphic aspect of his architecture, which is present. He's working with tectonics, he's convincing using bricks and stones, but sometimes he's not sufficiently surprising. For example, I think that Sigurd Leverens in Sweden is more surprising with a much more modest building where he employs bricks in very poetical ways. Mario Botta could be a little bit graphic in the negative sense, but there are positive aspects of his architecture, like even this section, that curvature there is rather unexpected. Again, I'm not very sure about that crown of trees at the top. Is it an homage to nature, to torture the trees, to be aligned like this? the top of the building and to grow from probably concrete. I don't know. I don't know if it's the greatest affection for trees that we can show. Again, we see the employment of brick, not neglecting ornament. And now the Watari, a museum in Japan, I wanted to include also a building that is neither a house nor a church, and it is in Japan. It's a museum of contemporary art in Tokyo. And I think it's very, somehow he was able to remain himself and also evoke somehow Japan. I think he did a good job at avoiding, using his paradigmatic brick aesthetics, red brick. And here we have, it's still a Mario Botta building, but adapted to the Japanese context, to Tokyo. And yes, this facade is a little bit predictable because we already talked about it. Here you have the rift between the left side and the right side. It's a trademark, or it's a signature element in his architecture. But somehow he honored the context, the Japanese context, Tokyo, appropriately. Now, maybe that banner there looks a little bit strange, but maybe that's exactly what the building needed in order to escape maybe the excesses of something too solemn, maybe. Okay, and now a work in Austria, which puzzled me, because for someone who is truly concerned about spirituality and about what he himself calls often the sacred, this building is too acrobatic and too, in a way, simplistically acrobatic. And I don't think spirit truly needs something like this. Like if I compare this with a very modest chapel that Lina Bobardi built in Brazil, here I see yes, an acrobatic architecture that is a little bit too showy, in my opinion. I mean, does spirit need this rotation of the cube? This, exhibitionism, this, extravagant gesture? I don't think he does. But that's what he thought of doing, and that's what he did. I personally do not think spirit needs something like this. Not to mention the very explicit borrowings from Constantin Brâncuș in Târgu Jiu, no? The chairs, the seating that are, almost identical with what Brâncuș did. as I said earlier, there is this graphic aspect of his architecture, which could be a little bit facile sometimes. And the little Corbusian man everywhere, if indeed this belongs to, I'm not sure if this representation, this section belongs to his office or to him, but we saw many times this Corbusian human profile, didn't we? I like this picture. Unfortunately, I like it because of the contrast. You know, look at the fence, the wooden fence, and then we see the mountaineers, and then we see the building by Mario Botta. But unfortunately, we see all of them in this small picture, which is exasperatingly not enough. Sorry about this. So here it is. I almost feel like saying that I like more the fence than the building, which the fence was probably not built by him and has no artistic or architectonic ambitions, but in its modesty, I think, and in its non-architecture, is somehow more conducive, I think, to believing that there is something higher than us, while the rotated cube of his architecture seems to say there is nothing higher than us, meaning human beings. So it's still an image of anthropos, of an anthropos who needs a little bit to be tamed, I would say. Anyway, but he's still very capable of creating these geometries that with simple means he is able to create sometimes unexpected results. The drawing also shows some anxiety, I would say. If I am to psychoanalyze the drawing, where the stairs are, I see some nervousness there. And now, in order to puzzle you, in as much as I was puzzled, here we have a casino built by this architect who is dedicated to the sacred. Now, what does the casino have to do with God, or with with faith, with spirit? It's the very opposite, no? But you are going to see a casino, which is, I mean, we know it is a casino, but if it was named a cathedral, we would have believed it. Here it is. And this confuses me, because someone who really searches for spirit, in my opinion, cannot build such a triumphalist casino. I mean, as Charles Baudelaire in that beautiful short poem in prose says, when he's asked by someone who interviews him, so to speak, do you believe in gold, meaning money? And the poet says, I hate it in as much as you hate God. In other words, Charles Baudelaire created the absolute disjunction, opposition between money, meaning gold, and God. But here we see the architect of God, the architect of spirit, the architect of the sacred, building a casino which could have been, considering its dramatic appearance, it could have been a church, or it could have been a cathedral, but it's a casino, and this confuses me. I am very sorry, Mr. Botta. I wish you happy birthday today, but I am confused. Are you for spirit, or are you for casinos? He built it, and he built it in this way, and this confuses me. And look at it. It could have been a cathedral, And if I was to talk in confrontational terms, I would have said it's the cathedral of money, of speculative, enterprises having to do with money. I mean, that's what a casino is. And Mr. Trump, who was just indicted, should know something about casinos because he owns casinos. And I know myself what a casino is because I once lost a little bit of money playing roulette in my midlife crisis. So I know what a casino is. It has nothing to do with God or spirit. It's the very opposite. It's the place of dissolution, of psychological disintegration. I know that Dostoevsky himself was addicted in Switzerland, to playing because, artists and creators often have problems with money. And you think that, a casino could solve your problems once and for all and very, very quickly. And this is actually the main subject of that beautiful, beautiful short story by Alexander Pushkin, The Queen of Spades. So maybe this is a subject to address, God and the casino, the sacred and the casino. But it does disturb me, the triumphalism of the structure that Botta built for this function. Is it less dramatic than his churches? No, it is not. Maybe it's even more dramatic. So it's almost like saying, gold is more important than what we get if we eliminate letter L. Not gold, but gold. The casino, proclaiming the power, the seductions, the madness of its majesty, money, and earning as quickly as possible, as much as possible. The casino. Mario Botta. Seen from the side, the true architectural king of the place, the beautiful landscape. Did that landscape need this giant casino? I don't think so. And here it is, the interior. I wonder what he felt, this builder of many churches and chapels, some of them inspired, when he did this. I really wonder what he felt and thought. I almost hear in my ears now the noise of the coins falling, giving the illusion of the players that they will rule the world. Somebody told me that in a casino, they increase the percentage of ozone to give you the feeling of omnipotence. So you would lose all your money there because that's what the casino is made for, actually. They only give you the illusion of earning anything. And now the church that we saw, but maybe it's a relationship. I end with some question marks. We see here the interior of the casino. We see here the exterior of this chapel or church that is extravagantly showing off. And then we see this, which was also done by the same architect. And I think it is a good work, a positive work. Maybe this long passage towards the chapel is a little bit too massive, but considering the majestic landscape, maybe it was appropriate. Maybe. And this is the last picture of this imperfect and rather short presentation. with Mario Botta as a man who probably is not too unhappy about himself and his accomplishments. I don't know. But his drawings, if we are to psychoanalyze them a little bit, show a little bit something else, I would say. Anyway, happy birthday to you, Mario Botta, and thank you.